Hi, I'm Celia Boothman, founder of LTR Coaching, and I'd like to welcome you to the Inspired Triathletes podcast, where I'll be bringing you stories from female triathletes and taking on topics that are important to women in the sport. Hi, and welcome to today's episode. Many of you will have just finished your last A race of the season, and there will be some of you that have that big day still to come. But whichever camp you fall into, today's episode is going to be helpful for you moving forward into 2025 and also beyond. So I personally prefer September to the more traditional time of January for setting goals and an evaluation of the year. It seems to be a bit more of a natural time that the season ends for triathletes. And also as a parent, it's that time when the term starts, children are back to school, so I've got a little bit of extra time for myself and for my training. So when planning a triathlon season, the details do matter. Whether you're aiming for a personal best or just looking to enjoy the journey, if you set clear goals, you pick the right races and tailor your training plan, these are the key aspects of unlocking your potential. In today's episode, I'm going to talk about planning the events that will help you to perform well on race day. Your training is another aspect of this, which I will cover in future episodes. So let's dive into how you can craft a season that not only challenges you, but also brings out your best on race day. So once you've finished your A race, and by that I mean the event that you prioritize this season over all the others, it can be tempting to go straight into what's next, what can I enter, and jump from one event to another. We swap out our triathlon season for a running season without really thinking about what our long-term goals are. I'm going to give you some steps to take once your season is over so that you can plan and build your best season ever. So the first thing to look at is the events that you picked. So what was it that you enjoyed about them? What didn't you enjoy? Do you prefer hilly or flat courses? Did you pick any events that in hindsight were a mistake in terms of logistics or your enjoyment of them? What was the race organisation like? What was the support like? Did the events help or hinder your preparation for your A race? You can apply this process to your supporting events as well as your A race, and you're going to start to get a picture of what your values are when it comes to racing. So, for example, I entered an event one year purely for the purpose of qualifying for the GB World Age Group World Championships. It wasn't really a race that inspired me, and I did it because I felt it was something that I should do. I had a really bad time on the day, and I learned from that experience that I would only enter events that inspired or meant something to me. So the background you can see if you're watching this on YouTube is from the Snowman Triathlon in Snowdonia. And the reason I love events in Snowdonia is because I had a year there when I left school. I spent a year instructing outdoor activities. So it's really close to my heart, and it's an area that I really feel has a connection to me. The next thing to look at is your performance. So how did you perform at the events that you chose? If you've done the event before, then you can compare times from past performances. But bear in mind that the conditions that you faced on race day should be taken into consideration. So we're not always comparing like for like in this situation. So for example, your bike time may be slower if it's a windy day, and the cold can affect your swim times, as can conditions. So don't use your performance based on past performance as a standalone metric. You should be comparing your position against other peers in your field, and then you can see how you stack up. It also gives you an idea of the areas that you can work on when starting to build your season. So it could be that you perform better in the swim than other people in your age group, so you know that your swimming is your strong point. It could be that you perform worse in the bike or on the run, and that is something that you need to work on. So looking at your performance in comparison to other people can really help as well. So for example, when I was looking at my performance, I entered a middle distance race one year where I had a mechanical on my bike. I was really inspired by the event. I was motivated to do the best that I could. It was a hilly and challenging course, but I really wasn't happy with my mindset when things went wrong on the day. So, when planning my season the year after, I wanted to go back with an improved attitude, perform as well as I could, and enjoy the event. The next thing to look at is the timing of your events. So, where did you plan your events in relation to your A race? Were they too close, too far out? Could you experiment with different timings of events this year or next year? So, for example, last year, one of my clients raced two events leading up to her main A race of a 70.3. She raced an Olympic and a sprint distance. I think they were on consecutive weekends. And after reviewing, we chose not to do those events so close together the following year, as they had been a little bit difficult to recover from, and she felt that it had impacted her performance on her main A race. So we took that information, we learned from it, and reviewed. The next thing we want to look at is the relevance to your A race. So, were those races and events that you did relevant to your goal? Doing a sprint try 3 weeks out from an Ironman is less relevant and will prepare you less optimally than a 100-mile time trial. However, if you've never done a triathlon before, then it could be more useful. However, you don't want to be in the position that you're 3 weeks out from an Ironman event and have never done a triathlon before. And this is why we plan and build a season based on your strengths, challenges, and confidence levels in different areas. So, for example, someone who's a strong open water swimmer will not need to practice as much in open water as someone who's only just started in their open water swimming triathlon journey. It's also important to be aware that this can change from season to season. Just because you're lacking in confidence or ability in an area this season doesn't mean it's going to be the same the season after. We can get stuck in a fixed mindset of this is how I am and this is how I perform every single year. So be really honest with yourself about your progress and where you need to focus your energy. So once you've done this review, you're going to have a good idea of your motivations and you'll be able to pick events that will keep you training and focused in the months to come. At this stage, it's also important to take a look at how your core values affect your choices. If you want to take a deeper dive into core values, then check out episode 9 with sports psychologist Natasha Lazarus. We talk about core values and finding your why and getting yourself connected to your sport. So, if one of your core values is having time with your family and training for the event that you picked is going to take you away from that too frequently, then it might not be the right time for you to enter that particular event. However, if it is important to you to do that event, you can find ways to compromise. And if it's going to be a temporary time in your life, then there are creative ways to fit training and racing into busy schedules. It's something that I've experienced myself, and I've helped many clients to integrate their training into their life and get that balance about as right as we can get it. Obviously, it's not going to be completely balanced all the time. There are going to be periods in your life when you're training more or focus more on training, and that's okay as long as we can we can talk to our partners and talk to other people in our life and make that work. So my core values include spending time with my family. So when I trained for Ironman, I made sure that I trained as much as I could during the day. I could be flexible with work, so it was a lot easier for me to do this. But there might be ways that you can figure out to compromise with your training, still getting the best from yourself so that you can still hit those core values. And remembering that this is one period in your life, it doesn't mean that that's your life forever. The next steps are to pick 1 to 2 A races. I wouldn't recommend more than 3, depending on where things are spaced throughout the year, but 1 to 2 can help focus your mind on performing at a high standard and also building your other events to support those goals. Once you've got those events in place, those A races in place, work backwards to see what support you need to get there. So we want to make this sustainable. That's what I like to remind people: make your training sustainable, and then it can become more of a permanent fixture in your life. If we're making things unsustainable, looping back again to planning and being honest with yourself, do you think you can fit the training in for this event? Do you think it's going to have a negative impact on your life? If it's a negative impact for a temporary amount of time, can you live with that for a temporary amount of time and then go achieve more balance later on? There's going to be ups and downs in your training and your events. So we now need to look at what we need to do to get to that event. If you've entered Ironman and your bike leg needs improvement, then you want to find some long distance cycle events in the build up to your main A race. If they're too far out, they become less relevant. And this is why timing is important. So doing a review of your timing for the last season can really help you with your steps forward. So I would say time trials are an ideal way to do the distance. They're steady state events and you're on your own. So the mental resilience that you need to do those events is quite high. But most athletes that I coach will pick sportifs or informal events to get the race distance in under race conditions. And that is fine as long as you have a goal going into those events and you use it as a training opportunity rather than just going in and doing whatever you want without some kind of goal for the day. So why don't we use our training to simulate race day? We can use training, and it will depend on your circumstances on how many events you can compete in. Obviously, traveling for events and the recovery time can negatively impact your training if you don't plan mindfully. And it can also impact on family time if you're having to travel to events and races. And not all families want to go and spectate at events, and they might not be able to. So just bear that in mind when you are planning for your events. We do use races because there's a bit more pressure during an event to perform. So you're going to push yourself harder. It's a great way of improving your fitness. It's an ideal opportunity to practice race day fueling and hydration, and also a way of figuring out how to carry what you need on race day. It's always a challenge to fit everything that you need and figure out how you're going to make it as straightforward and simple as possible. So a good mix of relevant events will get you to the start of your A race in peak form. Pick wisely and think about what challenges you have and what will help you to prepare for them in the best way. For example, if you're nervous about open water swimming, then swimming an open water event where you get to experience the start of an open water swim will be great preparation. And everyone's life is different, so don't try to emulate someone else's season or event schedule to be your best. You need to focus on what you need to do to get there. This might mean training or doing events with others for some of the time to help with motivation, or it could mean training less with others so that you can fit your training into a different time slot that is more convenient. So really think about the pros and cons of things, of what you're doing when planning these events. Whatever you do ultimately should support your goal and align with your values most of the time. And I'm saying most of the time because, as I was saying earlier, sometimes we go through temporary periods where we really have to push hard in training, or we have to do something a little bit out of the ordinary just to get some training stimulus or to get the practice that we need for that goal. As long as it's most of the time things are aligning, then that's good. So to recap, what you need to do at the end of the season is review your events from the year, the types of events you did, the timings of the events, the distances of the events, and your performance. Reflect on why you did those events and whether they aligned with your core values. And then go ahead and plan your season based on what you've learned and your lifestyle. So, as we wrap up this episode, remember that planning your triathlon season is more than just picking some random races. It's about creating a roadmap that aligns with your ambitions and pushes your limits. So, take the time to reflect, adjust your strategy as needed, and stay committed to your journey. The hard work and planning that you put in now will pay off when you cross that finish line. So, stay focused, keep training smart, and let's make this your best season yet. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a review and remember to subscribe because it helps me to reach more people. Or you may know someone who needs a little bit of help with planning and a little bit of a nudge. So share this episode with them. And finally, if you are looking for some support in planning your best triathlon season, then you can book a call with me. I'll leave my calendar link in the show notes and look forward to chatting with you about your exciting goals. Thanks for listening and have a great day. Thanks for listening today. Have a great day. Take care. Bye for now.